The heavy fog rolled in from the ocean, enshrouding the coastal village of Alvo Duplo in a ghostly blanket. The village, known for its serene beaches and quaint houses, seemed eerily quiet that night. The only sound was the distant crash of waves against the rocky shore, mingled with the mournful cry of the wind as it swept through the narrow streets. Maria Fernandez stood on the doorstep of her old family home, the wooden planks creaking beneath her feet. She had returned to Alvo Duplo after many years, drawn by a cryptic letter from her estranged father. The letter, written in a trembling hand, spoke of unspeakable horrors and begged for her return. "Maria, come home. There's something you need to know," it read. "The village is not what it seems. Beware the fog." As Maria entered the house, the familiar scent of salt and old wood filled her nostrils. The interior was dimly lit, the flickering candles casting long shadows on the walls. She called out for her father, but only silence answered. Her heart pounded in her chest as she ventured deeper into the house, the sense of foreboding growing with each step. In the living room, she found an old, dusty journal on the table. It was her father's, filled with notes and sketches that hinted at the village's dark history. Flipping through the pages, she discovered tales of disappearances, mysterious deaths, and sightings of ghostly figures in the fog. Her father's final entry was the most disturbing: "The fog is alive. It feeds on us. I fear I am next." A cold shiver ran down Maria's spine. Suddenly, the candlelight flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. She fumbled for her flashlight, the beam revealing the outline of a figure standing in the doorway. "Father," she whispered, her voice trembling. The figure stepped into the light, revealing not her father but a gaunt, pale man with hollow eyes. He stared at her with a twisted smile, his mouth moving silently. Maria backed away, but the man advanced, his movements slow and deliberate. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The man did not answer. Instead, he raised a bony hand and pointed towards the window. Outside, the fog swirled and shifted, taking on ominous shapes that seemed to dance and writhe in the moonlight. Maria felt a wave of nausea as the fog pressed against the glass, almost as if it were alive, trying to find a way inside. Without warning, the man lunged at her. Maria screamed and bolted from the room, her heart racing. She ran up the stairs, her mind a blur of fear and confusion. In her old bedroom, she barricaded the door and collapsed onto the bed, clutching her flashlight like a lifeline. For what felt like hours, she listened to the creaking of the house and the whispering of the wind. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her, and she drifted into a fitful sleep. She awoke to the sound of tapping at the window. Groggy and disoriented, Maria approached the window, peering through the fog. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at her, and she stumbled back in horror. The fog seemed to pulse and throb, pressing harder against the glass. Suddenly, the window shattered, and the fog poured into the room like a living thing. It wrapped around her, cold and suffocating. Maria struggled, but the more she fought, the tighter the fog's grip became. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself being pulled towards the open window. Just as she was about to be swallowed by the fog, a voice cut through the darkness. "Maria." It was her father's voice. With a surge of strength, she broke free from the fog's grasp and turned to see her father standing in the doorway. He looked older and frilier than she remembered, but his eyes were filled with determination. "Come with me," he said urgently. "We don't have much time." He led her down a hidden passageway behind the fireplace, the narrow tunnel winding deep beneath the house. As they hurried through the darkness, her father explained the terrible secret of Alvo Duplo. "The fog is not natural," he said. "It's a curse, brought upon the village centuries ago by a vengeful spirit. The spirit was wronged by the villagers, and in her rage, she summoned the fog to exact her revenge. It consumes the souls of those who wander into it, growing stronger with each victim. How do we stop it?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. Her father shook his head. "I've tried everything. The only way to break the curse is to confront the spirit and make amends for the past. But no one knows where she rests." They emerged into an ancient cavern beneath the village, filled with strange symbols and artifacts. In the center of the cavern was a stone altar, covered in bloodstains. Maria's father led her to the altar and handed her a worn, leather-bound book. "This is the key," he said. "The incantation inside can summon the spirit, but it must be read by someone with the blood of the village in their veins. You are our last hope." With trembling hands, Maria opened the book and began to read the incantation. The air grew cold, and the ground shook as she spoke the ancient words. A ghostly figure materialized before them, her eyes burning with anger. "Why have you summoned me?" the spirit demanded, her voice echoing through the cavern. Maria stepped forward, her fear giving way to determination. "We seek to end the curse and make amends for the wrongs done to you," she said. "Tell us how we can make things right." The spirit's gaze softened, and for a moment, Maria saw a glimmer of sadness in her eyes. "The villagers betrayed me," the spirit said. "They took everything from me and left me to die. Only a sacrifice of equal value can lift the curse." Maria's father stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "Take me," he said. "I offer my life in exchange for the village's freedom." The spirit nodded, and a bright light enveloped the cavern. Maria watched in horror as her father's body crumpled to the ground, his life force draining away. The fog receded, and the spirit faded into the darkness, her vengeance finally sated. Maria stood alone in the cavern, tears streaming down her face. The curse was broken, but at a terrible cost. As she made her way back to the surface, she knew that the memory of that night would haunt her forever, a reminder of the sacrifices made to lift the darkness from Alvo Duplo.